seeing equitable, sustainable, inclusive social progress like we want to see in the United States. We're going to start at a state level and walk you through some of the highlights from our platform. So we're going to show you a series of charts, look a lot like this, median household income versus social progress index. And so what we see a lot of is sort of what we might expect to see. The trend of higher income is higher social progress, lower income, lower social progress. But that's not always the case. So what we're seeing here is the state level. Each point represents one state. And I want to start with the highest performing and the lowest performing states. The highest performing is Massachusetts with an SPI of 62, and Arkansas is the lowest performing with an SPI of about 48. This follows the trend we might expect to see where the high income, high score, low income, low score. But when we look at this a little bit more detail, we can see how this starts to differentiate. So comparing Arkansas again to Louisiana, which is a state with a very similar median household income, we can see quite a difference in SPI score, 48 to 52. So something that Louisiana is doing with their available wealth is corresponding to better social progress outcomes than Arkansas. Another great example is comparing Vermont and Texas. These have virtually the same identical median household incomes of about 67,000. However, their SPI scores are very different. So we've got 59 versus 51. So we're seeing Vermont utilize their available resources in ways that produce better social progress outcomes than Texas is doing. And this is our 500 largest cities in the United States. And again, we see a very similar trend, median household income, social progress index. As household income goes up, social progress index goes up to a point, starting again with our lowest performing Camden, New Jersey, and our highest performing San Ramon, California. We see this does follow somewhat that trend, low score, low income, high score, high income. But again, it doesn't tell the entire story. So a great example of this is comparing the city of Champaign, Illinois to the city of Miami Gardens, Florida. So in Champaign and in Miami Gardens, we have very similar median household income, but very, very different social progress indexes, right? So Champaign, Illinois is about a 61 social progress index, whereas Miami Gardens is about a 39. So what we're seeing here is something in Champaign is happening where they are better utilizing their resources, the available wealth to them that is producing better social outcomes, right? So we're seeing economic data doesn't on its own explain social progress outcomes. Moving on to our most granular level, we're going to look at census tracts. So we've chosen Alabama and Alabama specifically to look at. So what you're seeing here is each one of these dots represents a census tract or a neighborhood. And again, we see that same sort of trend. Looking at the lowest performing census tract in Birmingham, we've got a SPI of 33 versus the highest performing of 61. But then we start to get a little bit more granular and a little bit more detailed, and we can compare these two high income census tracts. We've got the highest performing census tract is about $30,000 less in median household income than the richest, more modest performing census tract in Birmingham. So what we're seeing here is that income doesn't necessarily mean you have better social progress outcomes. And then the last two I want to look at are these. So again, we're going back to the lowest performing census tract, which is census tract 29. And we're going to compare that to census tract 130.02. We have very, very similar median household incomes and yet a very different social progress outcome. We see 46 versus 33. So I want to keep these two census tracts in mind as we transfer over to our web platform. And sorry, the Zoom things get in the way. So here we have our web platform, and this is all the census tracts in Birmingham. We're already zoomed in on the city of Birmingham. And we can see visually the lighter colors represent the lower scoring census tracts, and the darker colors are the higher scoring census tracts. Visually, we can see that the Northwest performs poorer than the Southeast, excuse me. So I have selected here those two same census tracts that we were just looking at in the chart. And I'm going to go ahead and view the full data for locations. So we're going to take a look at these scorecards. Starting with the demographics, again, we see it's a virtually same median household income between these two census tracts. We see a pretty similar poverty rate, and then we see a very similar race distribution as well. So these, demographically speaking, are very, very similar to one another. Going back up to social progress scores, we see the difference in those scores. And as we go through our scorecard, we can start to narrow down what exactly it is that is going on different between these two. So with the red dot, we see underperforming indicators and dimensions. With the yellow dots, we see performing as expected. And with the blue, we see overperforming. So a good example of where these two census tracts are differing would be this water and sanitation. So for example, this census tract that's performing better in social outcomes has more distance between them and hazardous waste sites and wastewater sites. We see better access to basic knowledge. We see better access to information and communications, and we can go through the scorecard and compare and contrast all of these. So one final thing I want to do before I hand it back over is show you one of my favorite features of the map, because I don't know about you, but I do not know my census tract number, but I do know my address. So we are able to type in addresses and take you down to street level. So this would be my census tract here, and compare it, visually compare it on a scorecard to what's around me, neighborhoods, census tracts, and take a look at what my scores are in my neighborhood. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it back.